What's up, everyone? I wanted to do a little thing on Ariel Pink and on the idea of being a transgressive artist or a transgression. I was already thinking about doing one on the idea of transgression in art, and then I was like, I don't know. And then this Ariel Pink thing went down, so I was like, all right, this is actually a good little focus point. Um, so, all right, look, uh, the too long didn't read thing is just basically that I am I am neither disgusted and horrified, nor am I impressed and excited by his thing, his choice to support Trump and to come out with it. I will say, if you think he's a white supremacist or white nationalist, I mean, if you really don't get what trolling is in 2021, you're living under a rock. I can't help you with that. I met Pink briefly a year ago when I had just moved to LA because he plays music with some of my friends here, and we were in the studio, and he came by. And it's funny. I guess a lot changes in a year because when I met him, one of the first things I said, I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, last night I just heard you on Kantbot's podcast, Tech Wars," and he got like visibly uncomfortable, and he was like, "Oh, like." Don't get the wrong idea, man. Like, I'm all about peace and love and unity. I'm not like, and he kind of wanted to, it was kind of like he wanted to disclaimer, like make sure I knew that he wasn't, sketchy or right wing or something. Because Kantbot, I don't think he's right wing, but he's, mercurial in that way. So it's interesting that he would go, he would go from that to just being like Trump, bro. But I wanted to talk about just like what is transgressive about him supporting Trump, what isn't transgressive, why he thinks it is, why people think it is, why people think it isn't, and just thoughts that I already had about transgression. Now, when I think about transgression, I think about kind of like two types of transgression, like two ways that it can function or what people mean by it. And the first is based in George Bataille and what he has to say about transgression, and I think he talks about it in a lot of places, but particularly in the book Erotism. And his main thing about transgression is that he says that transgression does not deny the taboo, it transcends and completes it. Okay, now when he talks about transgression, a lot of the time what he's talking about is in so-called primitive cultures. Actually, he talks about it in modern cultures too, but in so-called primitive cultures, there would be these ritual breaking of taboos. Like once a year, you sacrifice a child, human sacrifice. And the way he describes it is that the purpose of transgressing that taboo in a given place and time ritually is to reinforce that taboo, actually. That, if you have a taboo on murder in your society, you actually reinforce that taboo by breaking it. And he also talks about like Mardi Gras, right? That's a little less violent than human sacrifice. But this celebration where everything is topsy-turvy, everything's upside down. It's like this orgy. The king is treated like garbage by the peasants who get to rejoice in the castle or whatever. And yeah, this topsy-turviness, then it goes back to normal, and the norm is even more reinforced. So there's that kind of transgression. And then there's this other kind of transgression that is more about actually eliminating the taboo. And that has more of a progress vibe to it, where it's actually about changing the norm. So in other words, like that would be like in the past 100 years, the normalization of homosexuality, relatively speaking. So 100 years ago, it's completely taboo. And then Burroughs comes along and various, see, I'm not up on like queer history and stuff. I don't know, Mapplethorpe by the 80s, and people break these taboos. It's transgressive then. They're transgressing this taboo of homosexuality. They erode or eliminate the taboo, and now it's no longer taboo anymore. And those artists are less transgressive now because there's no taboo that they're transgressing. Okay, now see, I see Throbbing Gristle as a really good example of that. Violent and but trying to push things forward. There's a sense of progress with that kind of transgression, and I would use the word critique. It's critiquing norms by transgressing them. Okay, rather than transgressing them so that they get reinforced and sort of upheld as this higher thing that you know sacrifice a child to. But so yeah, as far as Pink being transgressive or his Trumpism being transgressive, I just watched him on Tucker Carlson, and one of the first things that Carlson says is, okay, so artists often do transgressive things, and Pink like nods, like yeah. I'm not sure exactly what Carlson thinks he means by that. I mean, he's such a dimwit, but when people talk about artist transgressions in that way, I think typically the idea is that it's the progress kind of transgression, that it's the moving into the unknown kind of transgression, that like to change things, to shake things up. And I wonder, I don't know if Pink, is consciously thinking one way or the other, whether it's the Bataille kind of transgression or the Throbbing Gristle Burroughs kind of transgression. But I think that, he said, I didn't vote for Trump because of Trump. I voted for him because I'm against cancel culture. By the way, cancel culture sucks. I'm with him on that. It's dark. I'm not one of these lefty guys who's like cancel culture doesn't even exist. That's gaslighting, dude. Cancel culture is very real and it sucks. However, I don't think that his voting for Trump and getting canceled like that, I don't think that really does anything to shake up cancel culture. I think that it is a transgression. I think that within the norm that is cancel culture, within the norm that is the liberal lefty sphere of indie music, within that milieu, it is transgressive to vote for Trump. But it doesn't transgress the whole system of cancellation. It just gets you canceled. So the thing is, for him to get canceled, I don't see that as a transgressive act in general. I don't see it as transgressive in the moving things forward, Throbbing Gristle type transgression. I see it in a way actually as that Bataille-ish kind of transgression where you transgress the norms of political correctness in a way that ultimately reinforces the system of political correctness, because these cancel happy people, I mean, the people who are just creaming for this, they love it. The cancel happy, trigger happy cancelers, they live for this, man, and it's like, just typing yikes, 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 yikes. These people love to type yikes. They have it on their clipboard. It's just Control V. So you're kind of just giving them what they want, and it's just sort of part of the game, which I guess is okay. I mean, if that's like your career move, that's the bump you need, is a little cancellation. But I don't see it as shaking anything up. I see it as the Bataille thing, where it's sort of like he's like the sacrificial victim. He's making himself, the like 9-year-old boy that the Aztecs behead, and then the head rolls down the steps. He's just like, I'm that. But then, on Tucker Carlson, he's kind of talking about how he's like the victim and stuff. I mean, it's like, because in a way, he's not the victim. He's the hero who is sacrificed to the god of cancel culture. So I think that to really go against the paradigm of counterculture, cancel culture, the entire ecology of behavior and ideas that is the current culture war, to get out of that freeze, getting yourself canceled is not breaking out of that. Now, I mean, this is really getting at one of these nodes of tension and irony and contradiction that I admit I can't think my way out of this, and no one really is doing it, but we got to get out of this. But this irony that historically, the idea of critique, as I understand it, critique is a very leftist thing. When I think of what the left means historically, I think of humanism and critique. They're linked in a lot of ways. But I mean, if you're talking about critique, it's like Marx. is like all about critique. Hegel, I guess. Kant, of course. I mean, not that Kant's like a leftist, this thing about progress. I mean, that's a thing of the left, that you move forward. We are progress. Progress is a left thing. Whether you're a radical left communist or whether you're a like mediocre progressive or even just like a lib, there's this idea of, even if you're a neocon, there's this idea of moving forward, progress through critique, okay? Breaking taboos to get things better, or breaking norms, right? There's norms and then we get to a better norm by transgressing this norm. It's the more of the throbbing gristle Burroughs kind of forward moving thing. The Bataille kind of transgression is kind of more right wing in a way because it reinforces norms, it reinforces structures. And like, so it's this irony now where you hear people in this culture war, people saying, you hear people on the right being like, conservatism's the new punk rock. Now, as I get the vibe that that's where Pink is coming from. He doesn't say something, he doesn't say that sentence because it's like so cringe, but I get the vibe that for him, it's like this, to vote right is the new defiant thing against the status quo. And therefore it's critique. So in a sense, I get the idea that he's being revolutionary by being a Trumpist or being a transgressive artist. It's like, it seems like it's based in this idea that ultimately the left thing to do is to be right wing right now. Left in the sense of progress, critique, moving forward. So the way to move forward, progress, critique, way out of this now. The exit from the norms, the way of smashing up the current system is to the right. The exit is to the right. That seems to be, I imagine that that's where he's coming from, although I don't know how articulated this is in his mind. But, and I thought about that when I listened to the Justin Murphy interview with Nick Land. One of the things that Justin asked Land was, he said, do you think that critique passes through left-wing and right-wing phases, that right now is critique in a right-wing phase? And I can't actually remember what Land said. I think he shut it down. I think he was like, no. I think because he was just like, no, progress is left inherently, I think. Something that I've heard, I heard Pink sort of talking about was that, or other, we have friends in common. And by the way, I'm critiquing Pink here. I'm not trying to start stuff with you guys. Our friends in common, I respect you, much love, but I'm critiquing Pink, and by extension, I am kind of critiquing you guys. So I hope you're cool with that. He, I've heard people being like, no, like this is the vital, all that this is about, this kind of transgression is just about vitality. Artists are into vitalism, intensity. And where is the intensity? The intensity is in the right now. Okay. I mean, this is sort of, I think, where he's coming from probably. And the way I see it, there's some vitality in right-wing transgression. There's some vitality in left-wing transgression. Overall, I'm actually not seeing a whole lot of vitality on either side or anywhere. And it's funny for me to say that because, it's like, what's more vital than burning down a police station, or versus like, and what's more vital than breaking into the Capitol? But like, none of this, I don't know. None of this stuff feels fresh to me in any way of smashing up the status quo. And, the thing with transgression, like, there's this disconnect from right and left. There's a disconnect of agreement of just what the status quo even objectively is. And I see it like this. There's like on the bottom half, it's like, okay, the left is like, look, the status quo is racism, systemic racism. The status quo is black people getting killed by cops getting away with it, mass incarceration, wealth inequality. The right thinks that the status quo is political correctness, cancel culture run amok, like that kind of thing. And they're actually both correct. It's like on the street level, on the deeps, on the, just, me saying street level is like so cringe, but just on the level of like the street, in like those neighborhoods, those communities, the bottom half of society, the status quo is Black Death, etc. And in the upper half of society, in media, journalism, universities, Netflix, whatever, in that upper half, the status quo is political correctness and anti-racism and don't be racist and dear white people. So it's like this weird, it's like this thing where at the top, anti-racism and political correctness have the critique of racism has been made, and so that's now this like ossified status quo of anti-racist political correctness at the top. But that anti-racism and leftist kind of stuff didn't actually affect the segment of society that it's really supposed to help and affect. So that's still mired in what leftists are concerned about, which is Black Death, etc. So it's like this thing where it's like, okay, what's worse, George Floyd getting killed or Ariel Pink getting canceled for saying something untoward? Obviously, the death is worse. But Pink is right that the upper half of society is this hypocritical lib shit and the canceling. So it's just there's this disconnect about what is the status quo. The thing that unifies both of those status quos, both of those status qui, is that both the political correctness and that lib shit at the top and the dear white people and the George Floyd getting murdered, both those things, what's the common thing? It's capital. It's money. Like that's what, mass incarceration, that stuff is about money. Slavery was about money. At the top, woke horseshit is about money. It's less violent, obviously. But yeah, cancel culture, the finger wagging, that's all about money too. It's just money across the board. So, I mean, I don't want to go too harsh on Pink, but I gotta say, if the real transgressive thing to do would be to round up some of those QAnon people from the Capitol, round up some BLM people, round up some actual Nazis, round up some black nationalists, militants, get them all together and burn down Beverly Hills where Pink grew up. Like actually burn down your parents' house. Dude, I'm not doing that. I'm keeping my inheritance, man. Like Pink, we're on the same, dad's a doctor or something. I'm in the same, we're in the same, cut from the same cloth, my man. So that would be the real transgressive thing to do. Not to get canceled. But the other thing that I've said in the past, though, which is this gives Pink a little more credit, is that I've said in the past that the only way an artist can actually be transgressive in this day and age is to be good. Like that's transgressive, just greatness, just excellence, quality, achievement, beauty, the heights, spiraling upward. That's transgressive to just shatter mediocrity. And I think that Ariel Pink's music is good. I mean, I don't understand. I haven't checked out all of it. I don't get some of it, but the Doldrums is awesome. His stuff in the 2000s is really interesting stuff. So, to whatever extent his music is good, it's transgressive to that extent. To that extent, it's transgressive. But the cancellation is not transgressive at all. Like I said, I'm neither angry and disgusted, nor am I impressed and enamored with this. I think that he'll be fine. I mean, it's this cancellation. He'll be fine. It's fine. Yeah. I don't like the idea of getting canceled, nor do I like the idea of getting canceling people. And I went through that, not being canceled, but having to I didn't have to, but throwing this asshole under the bus. If people know my career so far, maybe you know a little bit about that. I could talk about that another time, but I can tell you, despite however that went down, I do not support cancel culture in general. I don't support the witch hunt for cancellation, nor do I support people bringing cancellation upon themselves as though it's like some radical act. All right, there it is.